Hello and welcome. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Neem Coursera and here's a look at all the top stories that we're tracking for you right now. Mike Johnson, Speaker of the U.S. House and a Trump ally, called for the Justice Department to make public the findings and the documents related to the disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. However, he still joined as House Republicans voted down another Democratic procedural maneuver aimed at forcing the Justice Department to release the so-called Epstein files. Talking to a podcaster, Johnson said that it was a very delicate subject, but we should put everything out there and let the people decide. Referring to a comment Bondi made to Fox News this year that Epstein's client list was sitting on my desk right now to review. Johnson said she needs to come forward and explain that to everybody. Air India has announced a phased resumption of its international operations following a safety pause implemented after the tragic crash of flight A171 on the 12th of June. The airline said that the partial services would be restored starting the 1st of August, with full normal operations expected to resume by the 1st of October. A total of 5 routes will be reinstated and services will be reinstated as well with increased frequencies. Air India stated that it will operate 3 weekly flights from Ahmedabad to London Heathrow from the 1st of August to September 30th, replacing London Gatwick. Despite the temporary cuts, Air India will operate more than 525 international flights per week across 63 destinations during the phased restoration period. Donald Trump announced that negotiations with India are making significant progress, claiming that the U.S. had no access before his administration took action on tariffs. Trump made the remarks as he announced a trade deal with Indonesia that will now face a reduced tariff rate of 19%. Police in Thailand arrested a woman who allegedly enticed a string of Buddhist monks into sexual relationships and then pressured them into making large payments to cover up their intimacy. The Royal Thai Police Central Investigation Bureau said at least 9 abbots and senior monks involved in the scandal have been disrobed and have been cast out of monkhood. The possible violation of celibacy rule for monks has rocked Buddhist institutions and has gripped public attention in Thailand in recent weeks.
ยืนยันว่าเป็นเรา
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte cautioned India, China and Brazil about the economic impact of continued trade with Russia. Rutte urged the countries to push for peace talks and warned of 100% secondary sanctions on nations buying Russian oil and gas. And Rutte says this comes amid rising pressure from the U.S. and NATO to isolate Russia economically. The United States military has ordered the removal of about 2,000 National Guard troops from LA out of the 4,000 troops deployed in the city in the wake of anti-immigration protests last month. The National Guards were mobilized in LA to counter the growing protests that came after a series of immigration raids being conducted by the United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement, which triggered violent protests across the city. Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense stated that it had detected 18 Chinese military aircraft, 7 naval vessels, and 2 official ships operating around Taiwan until 6 a.m. local time According to Taiwan's Defense Ministry, it said that 6 out of 18 sorties had crossed the median line and entered Taiwan's northern, central, southwestern and eastern air defense identification zone. In response to China's actions, Taiwan's armed forces deployed aircraft, naval ships and coastal missile systems to monitor the situation. As per reports, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and the foreign ministers of France, Germany and UK agreed in a phone call on Monday to set the end of August as the de facto deadline for reaching a nuclear deal with Iran. Reports suggest that if no deal is reached by this deadline, the 3 European powers plan to trigger the snapback mechanism that automatically reimposes all UN Security Council sanctions that were lifted under the 2015 Iran deal. At least 203 people have been killed in southern Syria's Sweda province after several days of clashes that triggered the deployment of government forces. According to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the dead include 92 members of the Druze minority, 21 of them civilians killed in quote-unquote summary executions by the government forces. A summary execution is when a person is accused of crime and killed immediately without a full and fair trial. The Trump administration reportedly asked Israel to stop its strikes on Syrian military forces. This as Israel carried out strikes against Syrian government forces in southwestern Syria for a second day on Tuesday. The Israeli forces have pledged to keep the area demilitarized and to protect the Druze minority as deadly clashes continue in the region. Meanwhile, Syrian government forces have been deployed in the southern province of Sweda, where violence continues despite announcement of a ceasefire earlier. Tensions have flared up once again between South Korea and Japan over a long-standing territorial dispute. South Korea's defense ministry has summoned Japan's defense officials to formally protest Tokyo's latest annual defense white paper. The report reiterates Japan's claim over a group of disputed islands located in the East Sea known as Dokdo in South Korea and Takashima in Japan. Strongly refuting Japan's claim, South Korea has demanded immediate removal of Japan's territorial claims from the paper, further adding that the government will sternly respond to any attempts to harm sovereignty over the Dokdo Islands. Highlighting the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, UN said 1 in 10 children screened in clinics run by the United Nations Refugee Agency in Gaza since 2024 have been malnourished. The United Nations Special Rapporteur for Gaza and the West Bank said that it's time for nations around the world to take concrete actions to stop what she called the genocide in Gaza. The remarks came as delegates from 30 countries met in Colombia's capital to discuss the Israel-Hamas war and discuss ways that nations can help try to stop Israel's military offensive in the territory. Many of the participating nations have described the violence as genocide against Palestinians. UN Security Council adopted a resolution to extend the monthly reporting requirement for the Secretary General on attacks by Houthi rebels group on shipping in the Red Sea. The resolution was adopted with 12 votes in favor, none against and 3 abstentions. Algeria, China and Russia, acting US Ambassador Dorothy Shea, also say that the resolution recognizes the need for continued vigilance against the Iran-backed Houthi terrorist threat. Donald Trump's former national security advisor Mike Waltz faced tough questions during a Senate hearing on Tuesday. This as he sought Senate confirmation as Trump's nominee for ambassador to the United Nations following his removal from his former post in May. Under questioning from Democrats, Waltz maintained that he did not share classified information in the controversial group chat that raised serious questions about national security.
The White House investigation, Senator?
Yes.
Elon Musk's social media platform X has been hit by complaints by 9 civil society organizations to EU and French regulators. The organizations have alleged the use of users' data for targeting advertising that may breach EU tech rules. The 9 civil society organizations said that they took their complaint to their European Commission and the French media regulator ARCOM on Monday. Dozens of protesters gathered to voice anti-migrant sentiment in the Spanish town of Torpachecho for the 4th consecutive day. Businesses have been forced to remain closed after 4 days of unrest and several arrests. Reportedly, violence erupted against migrants on Friday after a 68-year-old man told local media that 3 youths of North African origin had beaten him up on the streets. Costa Rican authorities dismantled a human trafficking network linked to the criminal gang Tren de Aragua. This criminal gang had reportedly financed the travel of women from Venezuela to the purpose of sexual exploitation. The crackdown comes after the Public Prosecutor's Office and the Judicial Investigation Department conducted raids on 3 hotels and 4 houses in San Jose and surrounding areas. Bradley John Murdoch, the convicted murderer of British backpacker Peter Falconio, died overnight in Alice Springs Hospital. Murdoch was diagnosed with terminal throat cancer in 2019 and was recently transferred to the hospital from the Alice Springs prison. Murdoch was found guilty of killing UK backpacker Falconio in July 2001. His death leaves the mystery of the whereabouts of Falconio's body unsolved. India called on Bangladesh to reconsider its decision to demolish the ancestral property of noted filmmaker Satyajit Ray. India has offered help to preserve the iconic building as it symbolizes Bangla cultural renaissance, describing the move to demolish the landmark building as a matter of profound regret. India also urged Dhaka to convert it into a museum, symbolizing shared culture of the two countries, and pledged to extend cooperation for it as well. Two people were killed in flash flooding in New Jersey after several major cities across the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic were inundated by heavy rainfall on the 14th of July. The 2 victims were swept away in their vehicle in Plainfield, New Jersey, a suburb about 30 miles outside New York City. According to the National Weather Service, additional storms are expected with the potential for more flooding in the Northeast as well as Florida and Midwestern U.S. Authorities in Oregon have been fighting a raging wildfire in the state and have deployed a helicopter to dump water over affected areas. The fires in Jefferson County have prompted evacuation orders and road closures. The county sheriff's office posted a video of a firefighting helicopter dropping water with smoke rising in the background. Most of the northeast quadrant is under a level 3 evacuation order, according to the sheriff's office. Smoke from wildfires in Canada is degrading air quality in parts of Minnesota, raising health concerns. Photographs released by Mexico's National Forestry Commission showed Mexican firefighters working to contain wildfires in Canada's central province of Manitoba. The Mexican firefighters are the largest group of around 160 international volunteer firefighters who've arrived in Canada to help local authorities control the blazes. The US dollar drew support from elevated treasury yields, which in turn kept pressure on the yen after the latest US inflation report showed signs that President Donald Trump's tariffs were beginning to feed into prices. Rising prices on goods as varied as coffee, audio equipment and home furnishings pulled the inflation rate higher in June, with substantial increases in prices of heavily imported items that shored up the dollar and pushed bond yields higher as investors pared back expectations of Federal Reserve interest rate cuts this year. The dollar hovered near the one-month high against a basket of currencies. Oil prices rose as they were boosted by expectations of firm summer demand in the world's two largest consumers, the United States and China, but gains were capped by analysts' caution about the wider economy. Prices have seesawed in a tight range as signs of steady demand from an increase in travel during the Northern Hemisphere summer have competed with concerns that U.S. tariffs on trading partners will slow economic growth and fuel consumption. Major oil producers are pointing to signs of better economic growth in the second half of the year, while data from China showed consistent growth. China data showed growth slowed in the second quarter, but less than feared, in part because of front-loading to beat U.S. tariffs. That is some concerns about the economy of the world's largest importer of crude. Nvidia's planned resumption of sales to its H20 AI chips to China is part of U.S. negotiations on rare earths, according to U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, and comes days after Nvidia's CEO met President Donald Trump. Nvidia said late that it is filing applications with the U.S. government to resume sales to China of its H20 graphics processing unit and has been assured by the U.S. that it will get the licenses soon. The planned resumption is a reversal of an export restriction imposed in April that is designed to keep the most advanced AI chips out of Chinese hands over the national security concerns. It drew swift questions and criticism from U.S. legislators. Experts say the significance of the shift depends on the volume of H20 chips that the U.S. allows to be shipped to China. U.S. consumer prices increased by the most in 5 months in June amid higher costs of some goods, suggesting tariffs were starting to have an impact on inflation and potentially keeping the Federal Reserve on the sidelines until September. Softening demand as consumers hunker down is limiting price increases for services like airline fares and hotels, keeping underlying inflation muted for now. That trend, if sustained, could ease concerns of a broad-based rise in price pressures from tariffs. Economists generally expect the tariff-induced rise in inflation to become more evident in July and August. CPI reports arguing that businesses were still selling merchandise accumulated before President Donald Trump announced sweeping import duties in April.